Hey folks, welcome to the podcast. In this episode, we have a very special interview with Emmy Cooper. Cooper was one of the first four people that Bruce taught energy gates to, along with Jan Lang and a couple others in New York City in 1972. We caught up with Cooper over the phone. He talks about those early days training with Bruce, what it was like, what Bruce was like, what Jan was like, what New York was like. Then he talks a little bit about training with some other New York teachers like Kenny Gong and BP Chan, as well as his current teacher.
Supposedly, Bruce, who has a reputation for going to people's schools and not being necessarily the most, nice guest that they could have, right? He wanted to find Ron Rosen, and he supposedly asked a friend of ours who drove kids to after-school programs in the days. His name was Sandy Mulholland. And he supposedly just, at the school where, he met Sandy, he just said to Sandy, saying, do you know this guy called Ron Rosen? He was looking for Ron Rosen. And why he would ask Sandy, of all people, because Sandy had nothing to do with martial arts, and he just shows these kids to their judo classes and things. He drove them down and dropped them off at our school. And that's all. I have no idea how it happened that way. So Bruce came up, and Ron wasn't in class that day, which meant that Jan was in actuality, our senior student. And Jan could kill any one of us in the class. There wasn't anybody in the class that could, in terms of spar with Jan or anything, because he had all his Hell's Kitchen experience. And so there was Bruce. And Bruce came up, and he had wanted to meet Ron. He didn't want to meet Jan, right? But because Ron wasn't there, Bruce decided to show off, and he started bouncing Jan around like he was a ball. And Jan would go in, and Jan would bounce out. And Jan would go in, and Jan would bounce out. And
Jan was a pretty good fighter at that point. He knew what he was doing.
Well, that's what I mean. And we were watching, and every one of us knew that there wasn't one of us that would want to get into a real fight with Jan. At that point, we were all absolutely knew none of us would want to have a fight with this guy, right? And Jan just kept bouncing and looking at the guy and going, And the next day, Jan told me, he says, you know that guy? And I said, yeah. He says he'll teach us Tai Chi. And I go, good. And that's, so we got, 6 days a week, 2 hours in the morning from 6 to 8 o'clock.
To hear the full interview, click on the link in the description. Thanks for listening. Take care.